Hello! So today's content is going to be a little bit different. I wanted to do another one of the guides because people seem to like the guides so much. I just didn't have as much time. But today I'm just going to do a general ranked guide. So this is going to be Fenrir's general ranked guide. Basically what this is going to be, it's going to be me telling my opinion of how I improved at TFT and what I kind of focused on during each rank in order to get up. So I'm going to give tips and examples for each rank of what my primary focuses were that helped me. Basically, it took me around 2 sets, right? I played set 9 and I played set 10, and in set 10 I got Masters, and now set 11 I also got Masters again. And this is basically like how I got to that skill level of being a master level player. And basically, yeah, we'll just go through it like that. So in general, like, you might be just wondering, like, who is this guy? I was kind of like an art streamer, and then I got COVID, and I usually used to play fighting games. I used to compete in Guilty Gear, and I used to play a lot of Melee growing up. So I'm not, like, obscure to gaming. It's just I never really played, like, as much strategy games. But a lot of fighting game players around the time were playing TFT. So I started playing TFT, and I said, okay, I'll just upload the VODs on a gaming channel because I didn't feel like putting my art VODs up because I kind of just gave up on that as a content creator, kind of. But so then I made this YouTube channel, and yeah, I've just been uploading daily TFT VODs and just showing my rank journey, kind of. So that's who I am as a person, right? If you want to see like the art stuff, there's like instas and links to like all that stuff as well. But in general, I started playing TFT in set 9. Right, set 9 I reached a max peak of diamond. Right, I started in the middle of the set. Right, I started like when Sajam and I think Void at this set was playing, and he's like a content creator that I watch that plays fighting games. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I kind of gave up towards the end because I felt like there wasn't enough time for me to get to master. Back then, diamond, there was no emerald, so diamond was like the thing before masters usually. And then set 9.5 I hated, so I didn't play that much. And then set 10 is when I first got Masters, which was just last set. And once I got Masters, I kind of just gave up. I just focused on making YouTube videos and stuff. And now set 11, I made it to Masters again, right? So that's just, like, I'm just at a Masters level of skill, right? I know my match history right now looks really bad. It's just because I'm experimenting a lot, right? Like, I kind of got up to like 170 LP. That's what I'm saying. I'm a Masters level player. I don't think I have no ego. I'm not any better or any worse than any other Masters levels player. I'm like a 0 LP Masters. That's how you can treat me. And if you like that, if you're lower than this rank and you think that I can give you some good insight, then by all means, check out this video. And if not, then, you know, that's who I am. But I've just been like experimenting a lot because I want to try like Arcanist Teemo reroll, and that was like a guaranteed 8th. That kind of lost me a lot of my LP, but stuff like that. But in general, I'm like, you know, a top 0.5% player. I'm usually around this mark. At one point in the set, I was almost top 1,000, so I definitely have room to improve. But we'll see how that goes. So now, in terms of the actual guide. So TFT, you know, everybody kind of jokes like it's easy, you know, you just have to learn like fucking everything. Right? Like, there's just so much things to learn with TFT, right? TFT isn't a game of mechanics, right? TFT is a game of a lot of its knowledge, right? There's some mechanics involved, but like let's compare TFT to something like Valorant, right? If you're playing something like Valorant or even League, I don't play League, I don't know, but I play Valorant sometimes with my friend because my best friend loves Valorant. And like Valorant, there's like, you know, you have to understand the strategy, you have to understand timings, you have to understand util and like what's a good smoke and all of that shit. But then you also have this huge mechanical overload where you have to like actually be good at aiming and shooting in order to like properly rank up. And TFT isn't really like that, right? TFT, there's not like a mechanical thing. So instead you're front loaded with all these like knowledge checks and just having to like learn a bunch of shit. So a lot of times TFT feels almost like studying in a way that you just have to like know how to do everything, right? And the thing is, because TFT isn't like a mechanics based thing, I'm kind of saying I'm simplifying it a bit, but the one thing you can think of is like this quote unquote idea of learning curves. If you're not familiar with the idea, it's like what you want to do with knowledge, right? There's different ways you can learn a subject, right? Like, you know, if you're like learning, a lot of times you can like do something like this, right? This is like one example of a learning curve. So what the idea is that you're spending a lot of time just like this is like the overload idea, right? What this means is like you're spending all your time just like focusing on everything all at once, and then eventually you have this moment right here where it clicks, right? You have like the click moment, and then you instantly see like a large improvement of skill, right? Typically, like other times you might have like the complete opposite of this, where it's like you kind of oversimplify your start of your journey in learning, and you just like instantly like gain a lot of knowledge, go really fast, like get really good at one particular thing. But then once that thing stops working, you have this really long plateau, right? And this is like the like game easy, right? Whenever I learn something, right, the learning curve that I always strive to go for is basically like learning in increments, right? Because the biggest problem with playing a game, and especially like when you're playing a game, right, is that you, or like any skill, any hobby in general, is that you have to have motivation, right? This is like the motivation style, right? When you want to be motivated at every point, so you want to see yourself constantly improving, right? A lot of times with this one, you quit before you actually get better. A lot of times with this style learning curve, you quit after like the game gets frustratingly difficult, and you're like, wow, I don't see any more success. This game fucking sucks. It's all RNG, and then you quit. Something like where you have constant small improvements is kind of like the idea behind how I like to learn a certain subject or learn a thing, right? And it's like, it's a lot better than just like, you know, trying to learn everything at once, right? If we go back to like the idea of the first slide, right? Where we're like, oh, like, you know, you can just learn all of these things at once. It makes it really difficult, and then you don't see a lot of improvement, and then you get overwhelmed, right? So the idea is that instead you should try and like learn one thing at every rank, and that's what this guide's kind of going to show. It's like what I kind of focused on at each rank in order to like actually like improve, right? Another thing to note is that whenever you're playing a game, I just want to put at the beginning, make sure to take breaks, have fun, be happy, right? If we look at my own ranked journey, right? I took a huge break here, I took a huge break here, and I took another break here. These plateaus aren't me being hard stuck. These plateaus were me that I just didn't play the game for multiple weeks, right? And the reason was, I didn't find the patch very fun. These were times where, like, even this patch, I don't really enjoy it that much, but it's still, like, pretty okay. But there's times where I'm like, hey, you know, if it wasn't for this YouTube channel, I would just not play at all. But a lot of times I just do the bare minimum. I play 1 or 2 games in like the 2-week period. I do my uploads and I'm done, right? And that's really important to understand, right? TFT might not be for you. It might not be for everybody. Make sure that at all times you're having fun. You're being happy. Even if you win, even if you lose, that's how you know it's a good game that you're enjoying. Because even if you lose, if you can look back on those losses and still say, hey, you know, it was a good use of my time and I was kind of fun, then yeah, right? I went 8th a bunch of times trying Teemo Arcanist. Am I like sitting here saying I should have never tried Teemo Arcanist? It's like, no. I was like, that was fun. That was fun time spent, right? That's like the main idea or the main point or what I believe in a lot. It's okay to get frustrated at the moment, right? Like I bang my desk a lot. I'm like, fuck this guy. But like, you know, get over it, right? All right. So, in general for TFT, you need 2 out of 3 things to always be successful. This is the first thing I'm going to start with, and I'm going to go per rank distribution. I'll make little cuts in the YouTube videos so that you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to see. But you always need 2 of these 3 things. This is what I believe. It's like the basic thing in TFT. You always need either money, you need board value, or you need HP. If you don't understand what those are, we'll come back to like this slide, but just keep this in the back of your head. You need 2 out of these 3 things: money, board value, HP, right? Now, that being said, let's start with bronze/silver, right? Now, I don't have a good idea of what bronze elo is, just because when I first played TFT, I went straight to silver, right? So if we go to my learning, right, when I first started was set 9, right? So let's just go back in the past, right, when I started playing, right? And when I started playing, right, I just immediately got to silver, right? As you can see, it took me like a day. That's just because I watched a lot of TFT, right? I watched a lot of people that I watch play TFT casually, so I understood the basics of like, oh, this is where econ is, this is where I make threshold, front line, back line, and it wasn't that bad. I just played a couple verticals and I made it out of bronze. So I can't give you the best advice if you're a bronze player watching this channel, but hopefully me talking about silver will give you enough information that you can use that to help you climb. The main thing is that when you're starting out, make sure to enjoy the game, right? You know, you can't be looking at yourself in silver and think that you're going to be an emerald one day. You have to take it step by step, right? You have to look at the game in a way that like is fun and happy, because if you're not happy at the start, you're not going to be happy at the end. And you always want to look back on like, oh yeah, that was fun, the whole journey, right? It's about the journey is what I always say, because a lot of times the result doesn't end well, at least for me. And then the main thing that I did when I was in silver is I focused on like one comp in general, right? At the time in set 9, there was a 1-cost reroll called Tristana reroll. Set 9 was also fucked up, because in set 9, the mechanic was, like, you know, here, like, in this set, there's, like, encounters in set 11. In set 9, there weren't encounters. What you can do is you can bring a dude with you, and then your augments would always be whatever that dude's augments are. So what I did is I went reroll only, and this is not a joke. Like when I was in silver, I didn't play anything except one comp. I played Tristana reroll, and I brought the dude that gave me rerolling augments. So I just came into the party, I came into the fucking game, I loaded in. I'm like, okay, bet. I'm gonna get the fucking duplicator augment, and I'm gonna hit Tristana 3, and I'm gonna beat all these silver players, right? And I didn't spend much time in silver, right? Because the idea is that what it does is it helps you to conceptualize, right? It helps you to understand, okay, these are strong boards that I can focus on, and not have to worry about stuff later game, right? The biggest problem when you're in silver is that you're starting out the game. It's really hard to plan ahead, right? It's very difficult for you to look at your game and have a plan saying, oh, I'm going to save this gold and these items for this comp that's going to be like 20 turns away. It's very difficult. It's a lot easier to look in front of you at a unit, level it up to 3-star, right? Just buy a bunch of copies of it, and then just play the thing, right? The equivalent comp that I would say that you should try and play as much as possible when you're in silver, and I'm sure other people are doing this, so you have to like find a good spot for it, is that you should play Kog'Maw reroll, right? This is the equivalent, right? Now I have the full board here where you cap out around 5 mythic after leveling with Arcanist and all these other units, but typically your early game is just find these units, right? And you just get them all 3-star, right? You just roll and you upgrade them all, right? Now, you might not have, like, good Kog'Maw items, so then what you do is if you have, like, AD items, like you get a bunch of swords and bows and stuff, you can itemize the Caitlyn, right? When you get tank items, you itemize your tank, and then you put all your AP items on Kog'Maw. And the items don't have to be perfect, but you can try your best to make them perfect, right? And you should try and play this as much as possible, because the thing is, everybody's going to be making a lot of mistakes. Everybody's learning and starting out. And for you, it's really hard to like offload and learn so many things at once. It's easier to just go in with a game plan, know that you're playing a particular comp, and then just play the comp and like upgrade those particular units, right? Another example is, let's say you don't want to play reroll for whatever reason, or somebody's playing Kog'Maw. There's a couple like easier vertical traits that are really strong, right? What I always suggest is Story Weaver, right? What you do is all of the Story Weaver champions, you just click all of them, right? And you just click them, and you save up to 50 gold, and you level up when you don't spend much gold, and then if you're dying, you roll. And basically all you do is you play around having this Kale unit, right? And what you do with Kale is you pick, I would say if you're starting out, the easiest thing to do is to go green, blue, right? Right, when you pick Kale, she gets you basically get this free Kale unit, and then she gets upgraded items, right? She gets upgraded components, and the Kale is your carry, right? This is like a summon trait. I don't know what you call them, but every set has one where it summons like an extra dude on your board that helps you out. The reason this comp is really easy when you're starting out is because your Kale is your main carry, so you don't have to worry about itemization and like all these like difficult situations. You can just like play around just clicking all the same units, just similar to like a reroll, except you just have to get like a little bit higher level, and you can just play vertical Story Weaver is really easy, right? One that's a little bit more difficult to play, but if you're starting out, is also vertical Duelist, right? Duelist is one of the strongest comps this patch in particular, but it might change, right? But basically with Duelists, you just have to like save up your gold, level up. You can reroll for Tristana and Volibear, but typically you're just clicking all the Duelist units, right? And it's one of the strongest comps, right? You just put them all in the front, and they're like melee attackers. So if you don't understand what that means, is like you just want them to have like HP and sustain, right? And just click all the Duelist units, right? This is one's a little bit more difficult, but this is what I mean by like a lot of times just picking one vertical trait. All the vertical traits are all like kind of balanced, right? You should be able to get by, but you should focus on, if you're not playing like a reroll comp in particular, you should just go for a vertical trait, right? And you should only try and focus on 1 or 2 comps. Even though I listed like 3 there, focus on 1 or 2. Now, in a previous tutorial, I also gave a guide on rerolls in general, right? So it's called, like, it's on my channel somewhere, right? So let's go like my channel, right? Can I search on my channel? Popular. It's probably popular, right? So on my channel, like, I have guides, right? I have a how to play forecast guide, for example, and I also have a how to play reroll guide, right? If you're starting out, this is the video you should watch, right? You should learn 1 to 2 to 3 of these comps, right? Obviously it changes with the patch, so make sure, like, you know, if you've tried out and it feels really weak, then try out a different one. But most of them, for the most part, they're still relevant, right? I think the video still is relevant to a certain extent, but something like this really helps out a lot. Because what you want to do is you want to offload so that you don't have to worry about econ, you don't have to worry about itemization, you don't have to worry about all these complicated concepts. You just like hit your units, become very strong, and then you have the rest of the game, the rest of the 20 minutes of a TFT game, because on average it's like 30-40 minutes. The rest of your 20 minutes of your TFT game, you're just sitting there. You're just like, okay, let me think. What do I do? What are other people playing? What items should I make? You have lots of time to think. You have lots of time to do stuff because you're hitting your units very early and you're front loading a lot of the effort. And then that gives you a lot of time to learn the game, see what other people are playing, see how to improve in that way. So that's like my basic, like, that's what I did in Bronze and Silver, right? And then the other thing is download Blitz, right? I'll show you Blitz in a second. This is Blitz, right? So you might look at this and be like, what is this, right? Now, Blitz is this tool that is owned, I think it's owned by TSM or something. If you play League, you probably have it because of League already, right? But if you don't play League and you're just playing TFT, what this does is you basically install this, right? This is the website version, but you can install this onto your computer, right? And then what you do when you install it onto your computer is it gives you an in-game overlay. So in your actual game of TFT, there will be this guide that you can just click and you can pin, right? And this is more for when you're like getting to the higher levels of Silver. But basically what you can do is you can just click and it will like give you the guide in the game, right? It will show you these units. It will show you the items. When you hover the item, it will show you what makes those items. And there's lots of different overlays, right? Like if I go here, see, like these are the overlays that it will have, right? It will show you like your stream info if you're streaming. It will show you like the matchup, saying like who you played last, who you're gonna play later. It will show you like how much gold it takes to level. It'll show you like, you'll have this little item cheat sheet, right? And you'll have this, which will show you the compositions. It will show you a basic positioning, and it will show you like it has it, right? And this isn't cheating, by the way, right? I guarantee you, when I was in Silver and Gold, everybody has Blitz. If you don't have Blitz, you're just playing at a strict disadvantage. Because you know what the problem is? If you look at other people's boards and what units they're building and the items, you can literally tell that they just have Blitz open. Like, you can tell by the way they're playing. You're like, oh yeah, it looks like he's just gonna play that thing that's on Blitz. And like, they position exactly the same way. They put the units in the exact same spots. They've used the exact same items. If they don't have those items, they don't make them, right? That's how it is when you're starting out. So you should use these tools because, like I said, the learning curve, right? You want to learn certain things at a certain time. You don't want to like overload yourself and try and learn everything at once. So having things that aid you, like something that tells you, hey, this is a strong composition. Hey, these are the items you should make. Hey, these are the things. Then you can focus on other stuff like, okay, how do I move around the units? How do I scout out who's playing what? How do I pick items on carousel? How do, like, you know, all the other things in the game that like might not come intuitively to you. You can then focus on those things, right? And then also, like, the thing that I use the most a lot of times just to tell how far ahead you are is the benchmarking, right? This is what I was talking about before. It tells you like the board value, so how much is your board worth, your level relative to other people, how much interest you're earning relative to the lobby, which translates how rich you are relative to the lobby. And you can kind of see very clearly like, oh, am I doing good in this game, right? Are all of these blue? Like, am I ahead of the curve, or are all of these red and I'm falling behind, right? And then you can use those to adjust and get better. So, gold level players, right? What did I say? Download Blitz, right? I think in gold it matters the most, right? In gold level lobbies, typically what you find is that most people are just using Blitz. That's what I experienced. And when you start to get into gold level lobbies, you want to learn more comps, right? What I always say is, like, you know, you probably learn 2 or 3 comps in Silver, maybe more if you were in Silver for a while. That's totally fine, right? Be proud of whatever you do at all points in time, right? When you get to gold, you should always have, like, you should have 2 like pocket picks, right? You should have things in your pocket that you are so ready for. You are absolutely prepared for. You will 100% absolutely destroy the lobby with these particular comps, right? So when I say 2 comps, AD/AP, I mean you should know 4 comps, right? And the reason for that is Let's say somebody else is playing the same comp as you. If someone's playing the same comp as you, it might be really hard for you to hit those units. So what I did when I was in gold is I just focused on 4 comps, right? In addition to like whatever reroll I already knew, like Tristan or whatever, right? If I had a spot for the reroll, I just played the reroll. If I didn't have a spot for the reroll, I basically practiced 2 AD comps and 2 AP comps. And I looked at my board, I'm like, okay, do I play AP? Or sorry, do I play AD? Yes. Is there a X player in the lobby? Yes. Then I'll play the other one. Done. That's it. That's my game plan from the start, and I just played it. That's all I did, because you just get really good at those particular comps and you do really well, right? So for example, I will show right around here. So for example, let's say we're playing AD, like attack damage. When I say AD and AP, right? AD is the orange one in the game, and it's attack, right? And AP is ability, which is the purple one, right? Basically what it means is like, if you have a bunch of rods and tiers, right? Like over here, if you have like rods and tiers and you're making like these items, you're typically like making an AP comp, right? Like adaptive helm, blue buff, Shojin, archangels. You're doing units that do like a lot of ability damage, which by the time you get to gold, you probably will start to learn some of these units, right? If you don't know for sure, like for example, like Lilia does AP damage, Silas does AP damage, Syndra does AP damage, right? And then if you're talking about AD is typically like bows and swords. Bows really flexible, you use them for everything. Bow's one of those units, but let's say like swords, for example, then you're typically playing Ashe or Kaisa, right? If you're playing reroll, right? Gnar is typically AD. You're playing like, you know, melee / attack damage, like Bloodthirster, Sterex, right? Kindred is she does AP, so you're making like blue buff, Jewel Gauntlet, Rabadons for something like that, right? Senna is AD, so you're typically making like an IE, maybe like, you know, Giant Slayer, Deathblade, stuff like that, right? That's just like the general thing. Zyra, for example, Zyra's a good reroll. Zyra, you're making Shojin, you're making Jewel Gauntlet, right? You're making items like that. Those aren't by any means the best items for those units. I'm just giving an example. So when I say learn 2 AD comps, for example, let's say you're playing around 4 costs and not rerolls. Obviously, you're playing around rerolls. Look at my reroll guide and, you know, then Google and check out some sites to see like what good rerolls are. Check out Blitz, for example, and pick the rerolls on the Blitz site, right? When the Blitz site talks about comps, pick the ones like these ones that say 3-star that are reroll, right? You can pick those ones, and then if it's for example, the Zyra one is AP because as you can see, it's using rods and it's using tiers, right? That could be your one of your AP comps that you always play, right? This Lilia comp could be the other AP comp that you play because as you can see here, it's Shojin, Jewel Gauntlet, Rabadons, etc. Right? If I'm playing like sorry, where's my tab? If I'm playing AD, right? I can play Ashe, right? This is a typical Ashe board if you haven't seen it, and you make Guinsoo, Last Whisper, and IE. The other comp you can play is Kaisa, right? With Kaisa, you lose all of these, and you'll play 4 Bruiser, right? And 4 Trick Shot. And the items are similar on Kaisa, right? This comp now is once again back in the meta because they reverted some changes, so Trick Shot's really good. And then you'll put on Kaisa, you'll put your IE and your Last Whisper. Guinsoo is a little bit bad on Kaisa, so if you know that you're playing Kaisa, don't make a Guinsoo early. But yeah, you can just play between these 2 comps. That's like the idea, right? And then the other thing you have to do, especially in gold, is that you have to learn to slam items. There's a long-going meme in the TFT community. Whenever people don't slam items, they always make fun of it, saying like, I'm like a gold player, blah blah blah. I don't mean it in an offensive way. I make that joke too sometimes. I mean it in an endearing way because I used to be in gold, right? So I'm obviously poking fun at the fact that gold players, a lot of times you feel overwhelmed, especially if you're using Blitz to give you like a guide, right? Like, you know, if you let's say you don't have these particular items, right? What do you make? You might not understand the concept behind why these items work on this particular unit yet, which is fine. But then what ends up happening is you kind of just sit with a bunch of items. So for example, let's say I have these items, right? irrespective of the board. What items do I make, right? There's different ideas behind like the items, but basically, let's say I'm making snipers, right? If I'm playing towards Ash, Gwinsu is one of the best items on Ash. So I'll just make a Gwinsu, and then these two, I'll probably hold them because this bow can make like a Last Whisper. This cloak could make a frontline item, right? You need to balance your frontline, your backline items and stuff like that, right? Let's say I'm playing AP, right? I can make a Spark, which is like, you know, this is really good as a frontline AP item. It basically reduces the magic resist, so it makes all your AP units do more damage. And then Red Buff, it's like an okay item, so maybe I make it, right? If I'm playing like around tempo, right? If I'm playing like really fast, then maybe you just make Winsu Runans, right? If you're playing snipers. Because Runans is not the best item on the unit, but it's an item nonetheless. So you just throw it on the unit because you're trying to like save HP. You're trying to like kill the enemy, right? But then things become complicated like this, right? Let's say you're playing around Ash. What do you make, right? Runans isn't good. Red Buff isn't on the guide. Shiv is an AP item. This is a weird item. Like, what do you make, right? And a lot of times you'll just sit there. You'll be like, oh, I'll just wait and I'll just sit here until I get other items, right? The thing is, if you look at this tier, if you're playing Ash, no unit on the Ash board really wants a tier except for a frontline unit. So the thing that this is like thing you should learn in gold. Obviously, if you're like gold 4, you just got to gold, you might not understand, like, or you might not be like comfortable with this. But the main thing that you should know is that like if you're playing snipers, you always make adaptive helm, right? You always slam adaptive because this tier will never be used for anything else, right? Like you can maybe make like some item for Ash with a tier, but not really. So what happens is adaptive helm. In snipers, you'll learn, like, you can learn this after, like, as you're playing the comp. This is what I mean by experiment, figure it out. If you have components that aren't going to be used on your carry, don't just hold them for no reason, right? This tier, what can it make? It can only make a frontline item. So just make the frontline item, because at least you'll save HP. Slamming an item early, instead of just holding everything on your bench, is like a big thing that you have to learn while in gold in order to rank up, in my opinion. At least that's what I did, right? I really focused on items when I was in gold. And understanding like what to make and when to make things, right? If I'm playing AP, then you can make like, you know, you can make adaptive because adaptive works as frontline, backline. You can make a Shiv because that's like a shred component. You can make red buff adaptive, right? If you're playing around tempo, it's probably adaptive red buff no matter what, because red buff gives a lot of attack speed. So, you know, you don't have to like wait to make a Gwinsu sometimes. You can just make a red buff and put it on like a Kaisa or an Ash. And when I say tempo, it just means like, you know, if you're either win streaking or you have very low HP and you're scared that you're going to die, just make the items, right? It's not worth greeting in those situations sometimes. But that's like the main concept behind it, right? And the other thing you should really learn in gold is something like this. You should know all your utility items, right? You might not know what every item makes. You might need a cheat sheet still. That's fine. But you should start to recognize, like, I see a bow or I see a belt. I know that I can make anti-heal, right? Typically when you're playing the game, you need at least one Sunder or Shred and anti-heal. You need one of each of these, right? If you're playing AD, you need one of these. And if you're playing AP, like the purple and the orange, then if you're playing orange, you need this. If you're playing purple, you need one of these, right? That's typically how it works. So when you see these components, right, you have to think to yourself, oh, do I use this rod to make some other item? Well, you know, I might need to make this. Do I use this bow to make some other item? I might need to make this, right? You should always prioritize having, you know, one of these, like one of either of these in these two columns and one of these in this column always, right? So when you make your items, right, like for example, in the last example, if I don't have anti-heal, and I don't have, and this is like later in the game and I don't have anti-heal yet, you should recognize, okay, maybe I don't slam these bows really early, right, unless I have to, right? That's what I was saying with AP, maybe red buff, because it's like, you know, I might use these bows for something else, or I can hold on to them and use them for like these important components that I need in the particular game. I talk about this a lot more in my forecast guide. So right on my video, on my channel, I have a guide on how to play forecasts as well. So if you're a gold and higher level player and you're struggling with playing forecasts and slamming items and doing all of that, there's a lot of really good examples in this video, which I would suggest you watch if you want to stick on my channel and watch my guides, right? But that's like the main concept behind it. So when I was in plat, the main thing that I focused on was econ, right? So the main thing that I looked at is that, can I make gold here, right? When you're in platinum, it starts to matter a little bit more to like optimize your board, right? You want to level at proper intervals, right? If these things don't make sense to you, basically there's certain intervals where like you never want to level where you're using extra gold, right? When you pump your level, you buy level in 4 gold increments, right? 4 gold XP, right? So what happens with that is that sometimes if you level off tempo, what happens is you waste some gold leveling. Let's say you go to level 8 on 4-1, right? Typically people go to level 8 on 4-2. These things should make some sense for you if you're in a plat level, but usually people will go to level 8 on 4-2. Sometimes you go to level 8 on 4-1, right? The risk of going to level 8 on 4-1 is that if you're stuck on level 8, you're wasting gold because it doesn't perfectly line up with this 4 gold EXP, right? That's an example of like optimizing your econ, right? And it's really important to do that, right? You want to make your econ thresholds. You want to be making 50 gold as fast as possible and as often as possible. And you want to try to outmanage your opponents, right? Everybody's going to make mistakes still, right? Platinum is not like the greatest players in the lobby, right? They're not like God's given players. Everybody's making mistakes, including yourself, right? Because you already spent the time before, right? I didn't really talk about econ that much before platinum because I was focusing more on like, make sure that you get the comps down, make sure you understand what's strong, make sure you understand like the 3 costs. You pick up a lot of the econ along the way. You'll pick up like just watching and understanding guides and playing the game. You'll pick up that stuff anyways, right? And you'll pick up other comps that like, you know, I don't know the proper way to say it, but like when you get railed by a comp, like you just get absolutely destroyed by some comp, then you should learn those comps as well, right? That's the whole journey in platinum. But the main thing I focus on here is now is the time where you start to really focus on econ. Econ's really hard to deal with. I'm actually not even that good with econ according to like TFT stats. They say like I'm a B at best out of, you know, I'm an S tier flex player, but I'm a B tier econ player, right? But it's always like difficult because you have to know when to use your gold and how to use your gold. And it depends based on different comps how you deal with that. You should have a general intuition for it because if you got to platinum by now, you definitely either played a lot of TFT or you watched a lot of TFT and you have a general idea of this is how I played this particular comp. So I don't expect, like, I'm not saying you don't know how to do that. What I'm saying is you have to like look for moments. You have to remind yourself constantly, can I sell units here and make econ? Is it worth it to hold these units on bench? You should always have a good reason for doing that and then deal with that. And the main thing you should do with platinum is you uninstall Blitz now. I know I was talking about Blitz a lot. You uninstall it now because now you're at the point where you understand how to play the game. More so than the Blitz offers you the help, right? Your knowledge is better than Blitz's knowledge now, is what I think when you hit platinum. I'll just point it out right now, right? You look at Blitz, right? It says Sniper Warden's good, yeah. It says Lilia's good, yeah, that's right. It says Ghostly's good, yeah, that's right. It says Janna's good? If you're in plat, you know this is bullshit. Now, if you're not in plat, I'm not saying Blitz is wrong all the time and like whatever and it's bad and you know, like, I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is sometimes Blitz has like skewed answers. I don't know where they get their stats from, but it's not like giving you the best comps possible all the time. And I don't know why. I don't know why it's wrong. But when you're below plat, like, you know, how do I phrase it? Like, there's one point, it's either plat or it's emerald. It's somewhere in that tier where everybody kind of knows what the best comps are. When people don't know what the best comps are, it doesn't matter. It just matters having a plan. And Blitz is a really strong tool to have that plan. That's why I suggest, like, you know, at one point you have to drop off of Blitz because you will know better than Blitz. That's how it always works out. So you know, obviously, like, you know, I was suggesting this comp and it says it's B, you know, it really depends on your placement. But then you look here, it says Duelist is like a B tier comp, right? Now I'm going to show you something. I'm not saying like, you know, this is a website. It's made by Dish Soap. If you don't know what Dish Soap is and Froden, they're both challenger level players. Froden does like all the watch parties that you can watch his streams. It's really interesting. He gives a lot of insight and it's for all like the competitive TFT. And Dish Soap is repeated #1 player, usually the #1 player in NA every single set, right? One of the best players of TFT in NA. And they make this website that gives you a guide on stuff. Now, you know, obviously I'm not trying to show you this and say challenger players are playing B's comps, therefore they're the best, easy rank up strats, right? That's not my personality. I don't mean that, right? I'm a strong believer in education, right? I did a master's degree, like not in TFT. I mean, like I have a fucking master's degree. I studied my whole life, right? And I'm going to tell you now, you don't get better at math by studying from a university textbook, right? You're not going to get better at TFT by looking at challenger level players and saying, I can do that. I know what they're doing. I'm playing the same as them. No, that's bullshit, right? Focus on what you need to focus on because you don't know how to play the game, right? I'm masters and I don't think I know how to play the game. I'm masters. I watch challenger players sometimes and I'm fucking confused at what they're doing, right? And I'm not trying, that's not like an ego check. What I'm saying is you look at it for inspiration, but you have to internalize it and understand it in your own way. Try it out for yourself and see if it works for yourself, right? That's the main idea. But what I'm trying to say is with this website, as you can see, that Duelist is considered like one of the best comps in the game, and it is right now. In this current patch, maybe they'll change it. Duelist is one of the strongest comps in the game. In my lobbies, everybody's playing Duelist, and I'm sure when you're in Plat, everybody's playing Duelist. But Blitz says Duelist is bad, right? It says some things are the same, right? Look here, like it says Janna's really good, right? Janna's like here. Trust me, Janna's not that good, right? So that's the idea behind everything, right? You start to learn that like certain comps, just based on like the grand scheme of like how things work in TFT, is that like when you start to get to higher elo, some comps that are really skewed for I don't want to say low level players, like I don't mean it as an insult. I mean like when you're less experienced at the game, certain things appeal to you and certain things are stronger just because they're easier to pilot. But then once you start to get to a skill level where things are more difficult to pilot but are stronger, then those things just become really meta, and they're obviously going to be much more, you're going to have much more success with them, right? And that's like the idea. The other thing that you can maybe start looking at is stats. So over here, let me just find one. Yeah, so over here, this is tactics.tools. It's a different website. Tactics.tools is a lot more like, usually it's correct, right? There's very rarely something that doesn't make sense on tactics.tools, and usually when it doesn't make sense, it's an indicator of a bug. Most players just use this site. I know there's different websites you can use for stats. Pick whichever one you're comfortable with. I just know that my music stopped. I would rather just stick to this site. Almost always, this is the site that is correct, in my opinion, and in most players' opinions. And what this will do is you start to look at, you can start trying to use the Explorer. I wouldn't recommend using the Explorer. I know I show it in every video that I do, but if you're not like at least like Plat, in my opinion, obviously like you can check it in other ones if you feel comfortable, but you don't want to get skewed. But basically what you can do here is, even with the free version, you can do stuff like, let's say I have Ashe, and it's a 2-star Ashe. The average placement of 2-star Ashe is 4.0, and I have a 60% chance of a top 4 rate, right? What you can do with this is you can basically plug in filters and then do stuff like sorting by like delta, which this just means like this improves your position by that much, right? So if you have, for example, let's say you put a Gwinsu on Ashe, what that's saying is that Ashe with a Gwinsu will improve your average placement based on the 300,000 games that have been played with Ashe with Gwinsu. They average 0.28 better with a Gwinsu than with not a Gwinsu, right? So what basically, in short, if you see a minus number on an item, in this case when I'm looking at items or augments, if you see a minus number on an augment in terms of placement here, right, a lower number is better because it means you placed higher, right? Placing 1 is better than placing 8th. What you can do is you can get a better idea of what augments to take and what items to take to optimize these boards, right? It's not just a matter of I don't see the specific augment in my guide. It's a more matter of I'm starting to learn that I can do other things, right? The plan Bs, right? I can make a Gwinsu, but then, you know, maybe I don't have a Hex Tech, and my guide said make a Hex Tech. I can make an IE. Maybe I don't have an IE. I can make a Deathblade, right? These are all things that are minus delta. Even a Runans that isn't that, it's plus delta, but it's not plus by a lot. It's like these are things that on average people make, and they do really well with them. So therefore, statistically, I should have a good idea that this is something that makes my board stronger without actually like crunching the numbers myself. That's the idea of stats. And if you do that, it will greatly help your game. And I suggest you start trying to do this in Platinum, or at least that's my idea. Okay, this is the big one. I'm gonna say some shit and it's gonna sound hurtful, alright? I don't mean to sound like a hurtful dude, and if I offend you, then you're maybe part of the problem. If I don't offend you, then you're like me. That's the way I see it, right? And I don't mean that in a rude way. I just mean like in Emerald, everybody plays like they have a fucking ego, right? There's always a rank, like, you know, that curve, right? Like there's that curve of knowledge, right, where it goes like this, and it's like over here you're like tee-hee, I don't know what I'm doing, and then here you're like mad, and then here you're also like tee-hee, right? Like, you know what I'm talking about? There's like that thing where it's like you get better. Like when you first start the game, it's like everything's fun, everything's cool, everything's nice. Then you get to like some middle point and you're like, oh, everything is bad. I know everything. It's difficult. And then when you get like really good, you're like, oh, tee-hee, like whatever, right? I feel like Emerald is the collection of all the worst players in TFT in terms of mental. And it happens like this every single time. Like every single time I get to like around Emerald, like even me, like I'm a Masters level player, right? And I play Emerald, and what happens is everybody just like is upset. They just contest every comp. It's because like I think it's the problem is that everybody kind of knows how to play the game, and the way the ranking in TFT works is like a lot of times like people can be on a really big lose streak and then they'll like collect themselves in Emerald 4, right? And then it becomes like really difficult to get out of Emerald 4. And I've been showing the numbers here, right? Like the numbers on the side. But the numbers on the side, they also kind of indicate a little bit of what I'm talking about, right? As you can see, like a lot of times, it's not like an even spread throughout the ranks, right? A lot of times there's like a huge collection in the 4 rank. And a lot of that I think is just mental, right? It's just because like, you know, you're playing with a bunch of players that are really good at the game, right? They're maybe like Emerald 1 rank, and they just lost like 10 games in a row, and now they're Emerald 4 and they're pissed off. And what happens is like, I feel like everybody contests each other in Emerald. Everybody just wants to play the top comps, right? They'll just like have this dish soap website open. I don't know where it is. They'll have this website open, and if it's not in this row, they're not playing it. So then if you're playing something in this row, you're just fucked, because like everybody in the lobby is going to play the same comp as you, right? And it makes it so that like you have to really learn how to play contested. That's like the biggest skill set in Emerald, right? If you do not understand how to play contested, so like the main ways to play contested, I might do a like how to play contested guide, but like the main things you have to do is you have to have econ, and you need to have like health, right? You basically want to outlive or outbid, like outbuy the people in your lobby to play contested if you're playing super contested, right? And it goes back to like that first thing, right? Success 101. You need 2 of the 3 things. You need your money, you need board value, you need HP, right? If you don't have these 3 things, and even if you're contested, they matter even more, right? Because usually if you're contested, the person with more HP is usually the one that gets the top 4, right? So you have to get really good at understanding that, and you have to just be better, right? I think in Emerald, a lot of people also get hard stuck, I find. This is just from my own experience of like talking to people. So obviously this might be wrong. The exact thing that I'm explaining here might occur to you in all other ranks. You might be a gold player and experience this in gold 4. You might be a plat player and experience this in plat 4. You might be like, I'm a masters player, I'm experiencing a masters, right? But the thing is, it's like, you just have to be better by that much, right? For me, I have long-term goals, right? I don't care if I'm in Emerald 4 about getting to Emerald 3. I want to get to Emerald 1, right? And I think that's how a lot of people should think. It doesn't matter if you win, lose. Oh, I'm Emerald 4, I'm stuck in ELO hell. That's bullshit. Nobody cares, right? Maybe you care, but like, you know, if you care about those little things, that doesn't help you to get better at the game, right? You have to think to yourself, how can I improve to be consistent enough to make it to Diamond, right? That should be your goal, right? I know it's like good to have short goals of like Emerald 3, but you shouldn't get so caught up on these little things, right? That's what I mean by be the better player every game, right? If you're playing the game and you randomly go 8th because you're contested, or you randomly go 8th because you don't hit anything, think to yourself, what can I do to go better? Some games are fucked. Some games are really bad, and there's nothing you can do but go 8th. But the thing is, what you have to do is you have to make sure that the game that you can go first, you actually go first, right? A lot of people, they'll like play a game, and myself included sometimes, when I play like for a long time on the day, long day, you'll play the game, you'll be like, oh shit, I went 8th. There was nothing I can do. This game sucks. I fucking hate it. I'm going to uninstall. You queue again, then you have a decent spot, and you're like, okay, finally I got lucky. I'm just going to sit here and relax because I'm going to get a top 4. And then you just get a 4th. The thing is, when you have those positions where you're like, I'm guaranteed for a top 4, you gotta push it. You gotta get a 3rd. You gotta try and get a 2nd, right? And that's what I mean. You have to focus on positioning. You have to focus on econ. You have to focus on comps. You have to focus on augments. You have to have everything, right? It's not a matter of, understanding, I saw this in a guide, this is strong, right? It's a matter of you have to know the themes. You have to understand item pairs, right? For example, like IE Last Whisper, right? They both use a crit glove, right? They both use a glove component. So these will give you like a high percentage chance of crit, so it's a really good pairing, right? Similarly, if a unit has certain mana thresholds, you have to make sure that if you make several mana items or several augment items, you don't mess up like their casting times, right? You have to optimize these small steps and understand like what works well, right? It's not a matter of like, okay, I open up Dishsoap's website and I see a guide that tells me that Ashe needs a Gwinsu, right? You should understand that if I don't have a Gwinsu and I'm playing around Ashe, like, and I have a Last Whisper, I have an IE, you have to like put the items in the correct order, right? For example, an optimization for this Ashe board, I'm using Distro's website here just because I don't want to rebuild the board myself. But you have to understand that like Aphelios gives shred, so you can delay making the Last Whisper, and you should prioritize making the Gwinsu and the IE first, because the Aphelios will give you the shred that you need, right? And you can make the Last Whisper is obviously better than Aphelios shred, but you can make it after the Aphelios. That's like an optimization that will save you HP, because if you make a Last Whisper first, you're just cutting your damage with a little bit of diminishing returns. There's stuff like that that you have to learn. You have to understand the themes and the point of why certain things work in certain comps. The best way to learn that is not from watching this one video that's going to be one simple trick. Here's the best comp you can play. No, it's like you watch something like a stream, or you watch something like my channel where I upload daily content that shows you a comp every single day. Because I will point out at every step of the way, maybe I should have done this. This is better. Let me check the stats on that. And that's how you learn those nuances every step of the way. Because even if I make a mistake and you don't agree with me, at least you can watch an example of it and say, that guy did something really fucking dumb there. I won't do that in my game. There you go. You improved. Right? Even if I make a mistake and you don't agree with me, you still improved. You saw something and you're like, I definitely won't make that mistake in my game. Good. That's good for you. That's how you get better at the game. Right? And the main thing that you have to do is you should only play the comps that you have the best spot for. There is no entitlement in TFT. In Emerald, everybody just plays the, like, I feel like in Emerald, it happens the most, but everybody's always trying to play the same comps because these are the quote-unquote good comps. If you know that your spot is worse than somebody else's, you are only griefing them and griefing yourself. Get rid of the ego. Get rid of anything. Even if you don't have ego, just use your head. If you look at your spot and you're like, that guy is gonna do better than me, consider doing something else, right? If you have nothing else that you can play, then obviously you have to contest them. But at least for me, I hate playing contested. If I look, some people love playing contested, so maybe this whole rant is just useless. But what I'm saying is, when I was in Emerald, I was like, okay, let me evaluate the other person's spot. If their spot is better than mine, I'm out. Right? I'm not going to contest them. I'm going to focus and get better at what I'm doing. And I'm going to play something that I know that I can top 4 with. Instead of playing this line where I'm probably not going to top 4 because that guy's going to do better than me, has more HP, has more of the units. Their spot's better. I'm the one that I should be the one to pivot. That's the way it works. It's not like, I started first. I called Ashe in the chat first. It's like, no, you're not like fucking 2 years old, right? It's like, if that person has a better spot, that the game gifted them the units, God bless. They can have their fun. You gotta figure out something else, and that's the main thing you have to learn in Emerald, right? At least in my opinion. All right, so we're at the end of the video. Obviously this is where I cap out, right? I hit masters, so diamond for me, always diamond is the easiest for me. I think that diamond is the most fun. Everybody in diamond, they seem to like, I don't know how to describe it. I think they're all like so fixated on the idea of being master that they all try really hard. So nobody plays like an absolute fucking dickhead anymore, right? I think diamond is that tier where everybody like plays in the best possible way, and it's so much fun because I think everybody's like the same like me. Whenever you hit diamond, you're like, okay, just 4 easy ranks and I'm master, baby. And that's like the goal a lot of the time. But like, so I always find it the most enjoyable. I usually spend the least amount of games in diamond, right? I usually just win all the games or win most of the games. I just go straight to master when I'm in diamond. So I don't have the best advice for diamond. I was hard stuck diamond in the past, but that was when emerald didn't exist. So diamond was the previous emerald. So now that they split emerald, it feels like everybody collects an emerald that has those mentalities, and diamond, they usually just rank up really fast, right? So for example, for me, the main thing that I learned back when I was in diamond, so it's a little bit dated, but the main thing that I learned when I'm in diamond is how to optimize all the comps that you play, right? Before I was talking about Ashe comps, I was talking about all of these other things. It's a matter of understanding like your win con. You have to be really good at evaluating other boards, right? You have to understand like, do I greed here, or do I level, or do I just play for fourth, right? That's a lot of how I play in Diamond. Is like playing very safe, right? Because in Diamond everybody's kind of playing safe, so it hurts you to play really risky is how it feels. So it typically appeals better to my strategy of always being really safe. So what I mean by that, let's say you're playing in Diamond, right? Everybody knows the comps, everybody knows what's good. People typically don't contest because they're all trying to save their elo. Everybody understands win cons, but it's understanding like properly how to play around your board and how to cap your board, right? So for example, let's say I'm playing this Kai'Sa board. Obviously it caps around Xayah. The max cap is with Udyr, and you get an extra Ink Shadow item that you can put on your Xayah to itemize it, right? You itemize Galio, Sylas, all of this, right? It's really easy to optimize a board like this. Let's say we're playing an Ashe board, right? Ashe, right? Ashe, let's just do snipers. You, and then wardens, right? Now, this Ashe board is very good at getting a top 4, right? Because this comp is very easy to hit, right? If you don't hit Set's the hardest unit to hit here. And if you don't hit Set, then you just play a different warden, right? Now, what do you level for, right? What's your level 9? Your level 9 typically is like a typically is a Syndra, because you know, you play Syndra to get the faded bonus on Aphelios and Set, and this is how you cap your board. Does this Syndra really matter? Especially if you have Set 1, does it matter? No, right? The thing is, when you're playing Ashe, unless you have a sniper +1, it's very bait to go 9. You should use that gold to make sure you have Ashe 2, Aphelios 2, Nautilus 2, Amumu 2, Alawi 2. If you don't have all of these units upgraded, right? If these are not all 2-star, I'll put it here. You almost have zero reason to go 9, right? A lot of people misplay this board. They don't cap properly because they're like striving to like, oh, I can get a top 1 with this comp. It's like, no, like if you're playing this Ashe board, right? For example, what you really need to do is you really need to focus on getting the upgrades necessary before leveling, because that's how you guarantee your top 4, right? Now, if you are really far ahead and you have your units early, you can go 9 and even go 10, right? If you go 10, you can fit in 6 ward and then you're really fucking strong. If you have a sniper +1, right? A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll slam a sniper +1 on like a Syndra, right? Now, this is good, right? It's not bad, but the problem is, look at my board. This is a level 9 board, right? And I'm only 5 out of 6 sniper, right? If I want to properly cap this board, what you want to do is you want to hold on to a Kog'Maw, and then you don't want to put it on Syndra. You want to take the sniper emblem and you say fuck Faded, because Faded doesn't really matter, and you put it on a Set, right? And this is a properly capped board because the Set AoE becomes massive, and now you're 6 snipers, so your damage output is so high that you can probably play for a first, right? That's like a basic idea with like snipers, right? Obviously it's like if I had a fucking, you know, if my mom was a bicycle, you know, the Italian guy, my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bicycle, right? But like, that's what I mean, right? It's understanding that like sometimes like there's things that are strong early and there's things that are strong late. If you do this and you're level 9, right, you should also be dropping maybe a Caitlyn, play a better frontline unit, right? There's many things you can do, right? But it's understanding like how to properly cap. And the other thing with Diamond players that you really have to understand is matchups, right? I did this example in the most previous video, so I'll do it really fast, right? If you're playing an Ashe comp and you're playing against, let's say, like a Syndra, let me zoom out a little bit. Let's say you're playing like against like a Syndra board, right? I don't want to put all the units in, so let's just like, we'll just put like 3 units each, right? Let's just say, let's just do this, right? Whatever, right? Just for illustrative purposes, right? If I'm playing Ashe, right, positioning every turn matters, right? You want to maximize your HP at every point in the game, right? So like, let's say you're playing against Syndra. Opposite side of the Syndra always. You want Ashe to do max damage, snipers do max damage with the larger range, right? If the Syndra's front line is really, really bad, then you probably want to put Ashe on the same side, right? Let's say they have only like a Nautilus 1. Let's just put like I don't know. Let's just say they don't have a front line, right? I don't know. Let's just put here, Cho'Gath. They have a really shit front line, right? you can position on same side, because what will happen is as soon as the Ashe kills the Cho'Gath, the Ashe will start targeting the Syndra, and then the Syndra will die early, right? It's like understanding relative board strength, as well as like when to like break positioning rules, right? Over here, if you position opposite side and the Ashe walks up, you just risk the chance of the Ashe just dying by accident. Sometimes if they have a bad front line, you position same side just to make sure that you kill their backline unit first, right? It works. This is really important in like the Ashe mirror matchup, right? Let's say you have an Ashe and they have an Ashe with better items, right? But their front line's worse, right? Let's say they have like Ashe 2-star and you have Ashe 1-star or something. Here you want to position on same side, right? You want it to be like as soon as this dude dies, you immediately start targeting the Ashe. Because if you position opposite side, the Ashe will out DPS you, and there's a chance that these die before your Ashe gets their cast off properly, and then your Ashe dies first, right? These are like basic ideas, right? In terms of understanding like positioning, I do mention it a lot in my videos. In a video, I'm not gonna do like every positioning example, but another example is like Syndra, right? Syndra, typically you pair Syndra and Ahri, right? I was talking about this in my Syndra video. Typically you pair Syndra and Ahri because that's just like the go-to that's really strong. But if you're playing against certain comps, like let's say you're playing against Lilia, right? The Lilia Morgana comp, right? Lilia Morgana has a lot of backline access, right? So when you're playing against Lilia Morgana, typically what you want to do is you want to pair Syndra with Set, right? And fuck the Ahri, right? Because the reason is the Lilia Morgana might just snipe your backline, right? And you don't want your Syndra to die accidentally because the Lilia Morgana are hitting it. So what you do is you pair with the Set, and then it becomes a much better matchup, because if the Lilia Morgana accidentally or somehow try and kill your Syndra can heal up with the Omnivamp, and then you can fight it like a front to back and try and beat the Lilia Morgana. As opposed to if you try and out DPS with Syndra Ahri, what happens a lot of times is Lilia Morgana just snipe your Syndra or snipe your backline, you're fucked, right? But the pairing the Omnivamp is really important in this particular matchup. That's what I'm about understanding how to understanding win cons and lobby strength, right? There's rules that don't necessarily apply all the time, but there's rules that apply sometimes. It's really important to understand that and understand, like, you know, am I going to level 9? What is there on level 9 for me? If there's nothing on level 9 for you, you have to understand, like, does this relatively make me strong or not? And if it doesn't, just stay 8 and roll. Guarantee your top 4. There's no reason to risk going 9 to find some marginal strength increase if you're not going to win the lobby anyways. If there's some guy who has like fucking Kabuko reroll and he's level 10, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to play for top 4, right? You don't need to risk or greed. That's like the main thing in Masters, right? The matchups is the big part, right? Especially in Diamond. If you're like a god at understanding matchups and being able to evaluate, hey, this is what I need to do in this fight to win the game, because there are certain comps that just straight out beat each other, right? Like as I was showing you, like Syndra can easily just beat Lilia by just pairing with Set. If you don't understand that in terms of matchups, that's where you gain a lot of the extra knowledge that you need to know, right? So anyways, that's pretty much the guide in general. So if we go back to our TFT Success 101, hopefully this guide was somewhat useful. I don't know exactly how these guides are. I'll make more detailed guides for each rank. Like I'll do like a plat and under, these are the comps you should focus on, like those type of really nitty gritty guides. But I just wanted to do something like this because I thought it would be fun. And hopefully it's like somewhat informative in my yapping. But yeah. Just remember, right? Every decision you make, try and make informed decisions. Make sure that you're always you know, having at least 2 out of these 3 things, and try your best at every rank to play the best that you can, and make sure to have fun along the way. If you do like this content, there is daily content where you know, I've said it multiple times in this video, but I don't know what else to do because I usually just say it. But there, you know, I post content all the time, almost every single day, and I go over the comp, I go over the meta, I go over what I'm playing, I go over everything, and I'll continue to do daily content as long as I possibly can. And yeah, and once a week we're gonna do guides, right? Sometimes I miss it, but this week I'll try and do 2 to compensate because I didn't do a guide last week. And make sure to try out the stuff, right? And use these as learning examples, right? Ask questions if you don't understand what's going on. If you do understand what's going on, then, you know, use it to improve your gameplay. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys all enjoyed this guide. Hopefully it was a little bit of a fun watch, and hopefully it's not too long or too annoying. Goodbye.